Welcome back to Soulful Prosperity Talks, the space where purpose meets prosperity and where heart centered leadership lights the path to lasting impact. I'm your host, Prosperous Jen, and today's guest is someone whose journey embodies the essence of soulful service, a true Renaissance man who wears many hats, but always with one mission to uplift, empower, and transform lives. Brett Yarris has spent over 15 years improving outcomes for underserved communities in special education while also building successful businesses with million-dollar exits. He's coached athletes at every level, from high school football right here at Carmel High, where I live, to training NFL players for the biggest stage of their careers, the Super Bowl. His story is one of heart, hustle, and a deep belief in service leadership, whether it's guiding young people impacted by autism to finish a 25-mile bike race or learning from NFL legends like Kurt Warner and Steve Young. Don't know who they are. Brett brings the same powerful intention to listen deeply, serve generously, and lead others towards their version of greatness. So get ready for another powerful, insightful, and heart-driven conversation with my new friend, Brett Yarris, right here. Brett Yarris right here on Soulful Prosperity Talks. Let me let Brett in. Hi.
Hey, how's it
Welcome.
going?
Good. How about you?
I'm good. I'm hanging in, doing my thing.
That's so awesome. So just a little background, you guys, we live in the same community. Well, I'm about to not live here anymore. But we live in the community that I have lived in for the past almost 30 years. Putnam County, New York. Carmel is the town. I'm in Mahopac and Brett is in Carmel, but it's all in Carmel.
Mhm.
And one of my friends, I produce another podcast called Putnam County, the voice of Putnam County for Putnam County Business Council. And Brett was a guest on there, and I got to learn a little bit about his journey. So in addition to all the amazing things that I just told you about, Brett, he's also running for county legislator. And those that know me know I was very deep involved in my community for many, many years. I've sort of retired from that for probably the last 8 years. But I was about as high of a ranking official as you could get without being in office for many years, was at every town board meeting, every legislative meeting, all the things. And I've seen it all. I've seen everybody come and go. And the thing that stands out the most about you, Brett, is and also what I love about Matt Slater, but you have very different styles, is your ability to bring people together.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think, you kind of hit the nail on the head, right? The first thing that we're talking about is where we live in our community. And I think, I don't know if you want to call it at a national level. I think we see this even at a global level. There seems to be a lot of intent to make sure that we understand how we're different, that we know what makes us separated. And what we've really forgotten, I think, especially at the community and the local level, is that we're still neighbors. Like, that used to mean something back in the day, right? It used to be a big deal to know who your neighbors were, to know who were the people who lived in your neighborhood. Back in the day of block parties and all these, kids playing on the front lawns together and all these things. And we forgot now. We've lost that. And one of the things that has been inspiring to me and what pushed me to run this year is my actual neighbors. Like, we get together, we're from different ideological backgrounds, we have different thoughts about politics and all those things, but we get together a few times a week, we throw back a few beers, we watch the games, and we talk about what's going on in our community. And that's the thing that brings us together, is our love for where we live and wanting to see it improve. I bought my house here 5 years ago, but I've been in the community for over 15 years. And one of the things that we constantly see is that no one's really happy with what we are, but we're really excited about what we can be. And right now, there's just no one out there who's focusing on that, on what we can be and helping us get there. And if we work together, if we put aside party, because party doesn't matter. Political party doesn't matter at the local
Mhm.
level. We
No.
all want the same things. We want lower taxes. We want to make sure our roads are good. That's not a party idea. And we would just want to find a way to do that together. So my neighbors are the ones who kind of push me in, and they're the ones kind of powering me through. And I've been really fortunate to meet other neighbors a little bit further from my neighborhood, like yourself and others, that, regardless of how the votes come in, it's been really inspiring to see the amount of people that do want to see our community in our neighborhood improve, and I want to help them do it.
Oh my God. I love so much about everything you just said. So the first time I learned that lesson um, about uh, stop seeking how we're different and start seeking how we're the same.
Yeah.
And literally, science tells you like we're like a hologram. If you cut out any piece of us, we're identical. We're
Yeah.
identical. We are made up of all the same thing. And then this separation is an illusion. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I do see how this division really keeps people in control that we don't necessarily want to be in control, or that we don't want them to have that kind of power. It's not that they're the wrong people or whatever, but that's not what this is all about. And so that is such a beautiful observation that, look, and it takes all the different kind of people. If we were all exactly the same, it would be pretty boring. So I love that you lead with that.
It's so true. If you remember like the marketing campaigns back in the day, right? Like the days of Mad Men, if anyone who's familiar with that show,
Mm.
you know,
Mhm.
the common thing is, right, sex sells, right? We've heard that so many times.
Mhm.
The truth is now, and one of the businesses that I started and owned was a media company, a football media company in particular. But one of the things you learn early on is it's not really so much sex that sells, it's extremes that sell.
Yeah.
Anger sells, right?
Mhm.
Rage sells. And so there's money in making us angry. There's money in making us frustrated.
Yeah.
And when we spend so much of our time consuming things that show us and reflect our anger, reflect our frustrations, it's easy for us to forget that that's not really what's going on day to day with the people who live closest to me, with the people who live in my neighborhood. Like, I will watch something and I'll be like, I cannot believe this is happening right now. This is insane. I hate the way that everything's going. And then I'll go bring my daughter to the bus stop, to catch the bus in the morning. And all my neighbors are down there with their kids. And then we start having a good time because we're talking about, did you see the game last night? Hey, do you want to go
Mhm.
grab a bite to eat later? And all of a sudden that drifts away. The
Yeah.
more time we spend with our neighbors, the more time we spend in our community, the less
Yes.
time we get angry and frustrated because we're not consuming what this global effort is to make sure that we're tuned in all the time. Tune out, tune in with the people who are in proximity to you, get face to face with them, and you'll find out it's really not so bad out there, especially if we work together to make whatever improvements we need to make.
Oh my God, you're so wise. It's I love everything about it. And you know what? The other thing is it's a distraction. So,
Yeah.
and I'm not picking on, look, I love almost, no, I do love. I know I've known everybody on the legislative body pretty much. I think there's one person I don't even know everybody right now. I'm a little out of the loop, which is where I choose to be right now.
Yeah.
And but I've had great relationships with all of them. I respect anybody that runs for office, that anybody that, does this. But there was a few years ago, Brett, that they were spending time writing letters regarding reversing Roe versus Wade. I'm like, hello, we don't have sewer. We don't have phase three electric. We don't have
Yeah.
underground. What? Like, we can't. What is going on? What on earth does that? And I'm not here to say whether you should be for that or be against that. But
Sure.
my point is that the clarity was gone because of the distractions, like
Yeah.
the clarity of what we're here to do. And that clarity gets missing in all things because of all that we are consuming, and the division, and focusing on the hate and the anger. So
Yeah, I spend a lot of time these days, right? Because it's campaign season, right? I have to go out. I'm not a politician. I've never run for office before, and so I'm really still in the phase of introducing myself to people who live outside of my immediate neighborhood and my immediate community. you mentioned I coached high school football and lacrosse here. So there, some people do have some name ID with me, but for the most part, I think people, especially, that was, 10, 15 years ago, right? People are still now getting to know who I am today, the man, that I've become. And, one of the things you say is, like, when I first started kind of launching my campaign and going to talk to people, I would have people come up to me and ask me, like, hey, what's your stance on abortion? And I was like, man, I got to tell you, if I win this election, if I'm lucky enough to serve the people of District 5, which is, Carmel Hamlet, Lake Carmel portion of Kent, that area, I can promise you that's never going to be a thing that comes across my desk.
Yes.
Whether I'm against it or for it is irrelevant, because it's not anything I would ever have to tackle in the job that I want you to elect me for, right? We have to talk about our roads. We have to talk about our infrastructure projects. There's a huge water treatment issue going on right here in my district, Carmel Water District 2. It's a huge deal right
for
now.
a long time.
Literally for like decades at this point.
Yes.
And like these are the things that I have to be a part of. These are the conversations I need to have. But we are so conditioned to focus on what's going on at a national level, right? I don't care if the president is Obama, Trump, Biden, Harris, Bush. It doesn't matter. Very rarely do they ever even step foot in Putnam County. Very rarely do they come to door. The issues that we have to focus on are irrelevant to who the president is, right? The issues that we have to focus on are things that we can control by making sure that we're actually focused on the right things. And the way to be focused, especially for me, I have the things that, really push me to run, right? There's those hardcore issues that I am very passionate about, very knowledgeable on, that were the springboard into saying, okay, if anyone's going to fix this, I want it to be me. Here are my thoughts. But then there's other issues that I don't know about unless I go and talk to my neighbors. I mean, that's the biggest thing, is I have to actually talk to the people who live here. And then I'll find out, I spent time at one of the senior centers in town. And those are things I would never know because I don't have any, a loved one who lives there. But then, I have to remind myself that those people are someone's loved one. Those issues matter. They live here. They, and you only find that out by talking to the people who live in and around you. And I think that's the thing we're losing, is we've stopped being able to have conversations. And we get so caught up on, he's a Republican, he's a Democrat, he's whatever. I don't like anything about him. It's like, man, I feel like if you spent 10 minutes with me, you'd find out that we have a lot of the same things that we care about. And that's one of the reasons why I launched an independent party line that I'm getting signatures for now, called For the People. You see that? Yeah. So, the funny thing about that is that the committee for that, right, when you launch a party, right, you have to get a committee around 3 people. God forbid something happens to me, knock on wood, I hope it doesn't happen to me, but God forbid it does, that committee has to decide what to do with the party moving forward. And one of the things I made a clear effort to do was to make sure that every part of the political spectrum was represented on this committee. So the committee for the people has a registered Republican. He's a ranch owner. All right. He owns Ridge Ranch over in Patterson, and, has spent literally the last 24 months fighting government overreach. And something that I've been very lucky enough to not just witness, but help him in that fight. It has a sitting Democratic legislator who's a current Putnam County legislator right now, Nancy Montgomery, out of Phillipstown. And then it has a conservative party leader, Henry Lopez, who's the town.
I've known Henry for a really long time.
Yeah, and so you've got 3 different political parties that nationally you would think hate each other, but we've all come together on this one committee to say, hey, forget what we're, what you're hearing on TV and what you're seeing all the time. Realize that anyone in this position should be doing this for the people, and parties shouldn't matter. And that's why we brought everybody together, because we can still do that if people are willing to go with some of that stuff and get to know the people themselves.
I love it so much. And so I'm a Republican. And I didn't mean for today to be about politics, but I think we're talking about stuff that's so much deeper and really good for people to hear. So I'm a registered Republican, which I became because in Putnam County, historically, if you're not registered Republican and vote in the primary, you have no say who's going to be in office. Right.
Yeah,
but it was a good 20 years where that was the case. So I got registered as a Republican, and Okay, so yeah, so this presidential election was it was tough. I'm not a Trump fan. I'm not a Trump hater. I'm very much in between. But women's issues are very important to me. And listen, I've had a child under the most difficult circumstances you could ever imagine. A whole nother story that we'll get to one day. I did it. I walked the walk. I didn't have an abortion in that circumstance, and had a child under very difficult circumstances. So I feel like I'm an authority who can really speak to this.
Yeah, live
And
it,
I
live
don't
it.
think many other men, especially, can. But regardless, this is something my mom's been talking to me about. They're going to take away your rights since I was like born. So it was really important to me. So I started doing my investigation. And Kamala Harris, it was kind of hard to really get to know her. And then I realized why, because I really did my investigation. It's because she doesn't make strong stances on policies, on issues, on this. She doesn't take strong stances, and all of a sudden I realized this is why I liked her, because that everybody is running on these extreme platforms, policies, whatever you want to call them, right? Everybody's running on them. And what happens is they get into office on the people who will put their money behind these policies or idealisms or whatever you want to call them. And then the people get in office and they're not representing their constituents, they're representing their voter base to the point where they're actually in fear of their voter base, because that's who's got them here. And it's just a crazy, crazy system. So anyway, when I did that research into Kamala, I realized this is refreshing. I really like that it's not these extreme, whatever. And so I'm not trying to talk about Kamala versus Trump, just the fact that like leading with all these big, like, I don't even understand how, never mind how it has to do with running a county. What the hell's it got to do with running a government? Doesn't make sense to me. Okay. Like, it
I
doesn't
think
make sense to me.
I think anyone that's gone to a Putnam County Legislature meeting, right? And I've I've been to many of them at this point.
Mhm.
One of the things that I think people should understand is that when it's not just a talking point to say that party shouldn't matter, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm running for office, and yes, like, full transparency. Of course, I don't want people to think party matters. I want people to get to know me and hopefully earn their support, right? So yeah,
Mhm.
of course I'm invested in that. But it really isn't a talking point. I think a lot of people need to understand that the Putnam County Legislature has 9 seats on it. Okay? So there's 9 legislators for the whole county. 8 of them are in one party. I'm not even going to tell you the party because it doesn't matter, right? But 8 of them are one party. And
Mhm.
they don't get along for anything. They can't agree on anything. And
Mhm.
we're not talking about 1, 2, or 3 issues. We're talking, I mean, when you are at the running a government as big as a county, right? Let alone a state and a country. Okay. But when you're running a government that large, I mean, you're talking about hundreds of issues that come up. And we're conditioned as consumers of media, right? As consumers of information, to be focused on 3 or 4 things, right? Right now, the buzz issues are women's rights, immigration, um, right at this point, like, just overall civil liberties, and what we're seeing with due process is a big issue right now, right? Like, those are the only things we're talking about. So then I go door to door because I want to talk about what's going on with the county sales tax, or I want to talk about what's going on with Carmel Hamlet losing Carmel Cinema to a giant multinational corporate real estate firm.
Mhm.
And people want to ask me about immigration,
Yeah.
and it's like, man, I get it. It's a huge issue. We should talk about it. We should have thoughts and honest conversations about it.
But
But
that's
that's
not my
not going
job.
to be something that I'm going to legislate on, right? That being said, I think it's also important to say that those issues shouldn't be pushed aside.
No.
What we have to relearn is how to have meaningful conversations around them.
Yes.
I'm sitting on a committee with,
Without
like I said, a
insulting people.
Republican, a conservative party leader, and a Democrat.
I
Okay.
love it.
And so we have conversations. We don't always agree. I don't
Yeah.
agree with all 3 of them at the same time. We have
Mm-mm.
to have honest conversations, and we have to be willing to be okay with disagreeing. We have to be willing to be okay with different viewpoints. That doesn't mean I
That's
have
what a
to hate
board is
you.
supposed to be. It's
I
supposed
mean,
to have all the opinions. You fight in private, and then you go out and you make the decision, and then you support each other in public.
but that's
That's
business too, right? Right, Jen? I mean, that's
yes.
business too. One of the when I was running one of my companies, this one was Pro Football Network. Okay, I was the chief strategy officer as well as being a co-founder and co-owner. And as the chief strategy officer, you have all different departments reporting into you, right? Everything from graphic design to copy editing to SEO to videography to video editing, like all these different departments, all these different disciplines and skill sets, and everyone is reporting in. And one of the things I always used to say is at my team meetings, I used to say two things. Number one is a quote from Banksy, right? The controversial artist. And he would say, "You are an acceptable level of risk. And if you weren't, you would know." And I would always say that in a team meeting, because what I was pushing my people to do was to basically push themselves to go outside the bounds of what's acceptable. Push
Yeah.
yourself, be unexpected, be risky, and we'll know when we're actually making movement in that, because people are going to let us know. They're going to tell us, hey, that's crazy, or they're going to start
Right.
talking about us. That
Mhm.
means we've moved beyond, right? But the other thing I would say is everyone's going to get a chance to have an opinion. We're going to be talking about, let's say we're talking about a digital subscription product. Okay. The graphic designer to the copy editor to anyone who's a stakeholder in that is going to have an opportunity to give me their opinion and to give each other their opinion. And there's going to be a lot of disagreement. And I would
Mm,
make sure that every person involved had autonomy over their part of the project. So they
yes.
had to listen to everyone else's opinion, but they got to make the final decision. But
Yes.
once that decision was made, the ground rule was we then, every single one of
I
us, whether
support
we
it.
agreed with it or disagreed with it, we gave it 110% effort to support it. Because
Yes.
that's how you move forward as a community, whether it's in business, whether it's
Amen.
in government, whether it's in your homeowners association. We've forgotten to move forward together, even if we initially disagreed. We got to get back to that.
Yeah, I agree so wholeheartedly. And the other thing we have to get back to is the clarity. Like, like when I don't know what happens when you get onto the legislative board. Is there leadership training? Is there a review of what the mission is, what your role means, what taking ownership and agency over what the mission is of the Putnam County Legislature, right? If we were
Yeah.
clear on that mission, we wouldn't be focused on Roe versus Wade.
So
If
such a
we were
good
clear
point.
on that vision, we wouldn't be saying we don't need a human rights, what's that department that they decided they didn't need. If we were clear on this mission, like, the clarity seems to be gone, and remembering why we're here and what purpose we serve. And I'm just picking on Putnam County right now. I see that gone in all levels
Yeah.
of government, and that's the thing, that's the filter. Should we be doing this right now? Is this in line with our mission? Is this what we're supposed to be focused on? Is this what we're supposed to be doing? Right. So,
Yeah, and I think that's why we named the party For the People, because at the
yeah.
end of the day, at the heart of it all, that is exactly what the mission is. The mission, when you serve, is for the people, right?
Yeah.
When we were at our most divided, right? We're going back to the Civil War here, right? We're at our most divided. Neighbors are fighting neighbors,
Mhm.
and unfortunately, not to sound hyperbolic or being alarmist, that's sometimes what it feels like now is like
Yes.
we're headed back there
Totally
where this
does.
is going to go
We're going,
beyond rhetoric.
we're going to biblical times.
Yeah, and so, like, when I look back to that, one of the great books that I read a lot is, it's called Ordeal by Fire. It's by historian James McPherson, and it's about the Civil War. And it's a great read. It's a great insight into not just the leaders of that period, but the everyday person who was living
Yeah.
through it too. And one of the things then, obviously it's going to shift to Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. And one of the great quotes that came from that was he was reminding everybody that at the end of the day, what we've lost sight of is we need to put together a government that is of the people, by the
By
people,
people,
and
for the
for the people. That is what we're trying to do. And that's what the Putnam County government in this case, and forget Putnam County, what all governments
yeah.
that I've seen have lost sight of is that you are of the people, by the people, for the people. And in Putnam County in particular, what we see is these ridiculous fights that go
Yeah.
on back and forth. I went to a legislative meeting. This is a true story. I went to a legislative meeting where the legislator was having a debate over should the county executive, Kevin Byrne, should the county executive sit or stand when he
Oh,
delivers the state of the
yeah.
county address? That was a 30-minute conversation, Jen.
Yeah.
Should the county executive sit or stand? A 30-minute conversation. The
Yeah.
legislature is divided into like pro everything that Kevin Byrne, the county executive, wants to do, or being against everything the county executive wants to
Right.
do.
Which is
And
just
what's
crazy
lost in
because
that,
nobody is all bad and nobody is all good. And if
that's
you're only
right.
focused on the bad, you're missing the good. And if you're
What
only
gets lost
focused
in
on the good, you're blind to the bad.
that's right.
Period.
That's
Like
right.
we're
And
human.
what gets lost in all of that between the
Yeah.
legislature and the county executive is us, is the
Yeah.
people. While
Yeah.
they're fighting having their political games, they've forgotten the initial mission for the people. That's
Yeah.
why you're there. That's
Yeah.
why, we need to get back to understanding that we've got real serious issues. We have serious problems and we need serious people to solve them.
I love it. So I'm gonna switch gears.
Sure.
How old are you?
I'm 35.
Okay,
I'll be 36 in November.
that's about the age that I figured. So, Brett, how did you get this wise? Like, what is the journey that brought you here?
Yeah. So I give a lot of it to, a lot of it is the support system that I had growing up. I grew up, my parents got divorced when I was 8. And I still have a good relationship with my father, but it's been, up and down as time's gone on. So a lot of my time, especially early on, was spent with my mom. Single mom. She worked a low paying job. She made about $35,000, $40,000 a year for 30 years working at the same place, customer service. But watching and remembering, I always say it's crazy because we struggled, but it didn't always feel like struggle. And I give so much credit to my mom for that.
Yeah.
We bounced around from basement apartment to basement apartment.
Yeah,
The
me too.
winters would come. I couldn't get out of bed because of how cold it was because she wouldn't put the heat on because of how much that cost. And yet somehow I still never felt like I
Yeah.
was in this
Yeah.
unbeatable struggle.
Mm,
And it's because every day, day in, day out, I saw my mom put in the work, whether
yeah.
it was to be a parent to me, to maintain her job, to make sure that I was safe and I had opportunities that, that I needed to be successful. And so it starts with her. She was, I mean, she is, I don't want to say was, she's still kicking. She's killing it. She's great. But she's amazing. She really is a superhero. When they say not all heroes wear capes, I think she is the first person I think of when I hear that. But then I also had just a great support system around me on top of that. My uncle, my father's brother, he's my godfather. He's my business partner in what we do with the special needs community. And, that's where I think a lot of the wisdom comes in, because from the time I was 20 to 21, when I first was like getting out of college, I was with my now wife, but, I knew I wanted to be with her, forever. And I was looking to get my life going. And my first thought was to chase the dollar. Like I gotta make money. I gotta make money. And the first job I had was as a one-to-one aide, right? For a kid with autism. And I was making like, I don't know, 17, 18, maybe $19,000 a year. And it was tough. I had no formal training in special ed. And so it was really rough. It was really rough. I didn't know anything. And unfortunately, the young people we were working with, they had aggressive behaviors, they had self-injurious behaviors. And these were things that I had no experience with. I didn't grow up with. I didn't know. And I was like, dude, I cannot do this. I cannot do this. 3-4 weeks in, I was ready to throw in the towel. And my uncle was helping me get interviews. At the time, he was part of the North American contingent and a North American manager for ADP, the big payroll company.
Mhm.
I was like, please get me an interview. I will be a full-on Nepo baby. Like, please help me, get an interview. Like, get me out of here. I was also interviewing at ESPN. I get to the end of the interviews, both make a job offer to me, and I go to him. He's, my counsel, my mentor. And I said, hey, like, which job should I take? And he's like, I think you should stay as a one-to-one aide. And I said to him, I said, okay, maybe I wasn't clear about what we're doing here. Maybe I didn't explain the fundamentals of what we're trying to do, but I'm trying to leave where I'm at, right? And this is what he said to me that has driven everything that's come since. which is like you're 20, you're 21 years old. The dollar is going to be there for you. What you need to do is figure out how you're going to leave a mark. Right now, you're in a position where you have to sacrifice time and money to help people. Not a lot of people are willing to help. He's like, do that now, learn that lesson, and it's going to carry you forward. And that's literally what's happened. It really just kind of took off from there. I went on to get my master's in special education. I went on to get advanced degrees in behavior science. And I ended up, working up in that very same classroom. I went from a 1-to-1 aide to a teaching assistant. I then became a full-on special ed teacher, behavior case manager. And then I went on to, start my first business, which I still run, called the Behavior Movement, where we teach rec, leisure, and fitness skills to individuals with special needs. And in all the other companies I've started, or helped start, Pro Football Network, Football Behavior, whatever it's been along the road, running for Putnam County Legislature, one of the things that's never stopped is that commitment to that community, because at the heart of everything that I have to remind myself of, it's that there are so many people out there that we don't think about helping, because we're so bogged down in what we've been talking about for the bulk of this conversation. We're so caught up in the things that don't matter that we forget who gets forgotten.
Yeah.
And so I've been able to kind of, have that kind of drive me, have people like my uncle, like my mom, like my father, like all these other people sort of in my corner and in my ear, kind of pushing me along, keeping me grounded and reminding me of what actually matters. And, I've been fortunate to have a lot of successes. I've had some failures, which I think has been more helpful to me than anything else.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so, I'm 35. I got 2 kids now. My daughter's going to be 9 in a couple of weeks, and my son's going to be 4. I've been with my wife since I'm 19 years old. I met her at 19 and it was instant, kind of knew what was going on. And so a lot of it has been the people who give me great advice, but also the people who have helped me build such a solid foundation that hasn't had a lot of change.
Yeah.
A lot of the same people that helped me get from being a young boy to a young man have also been the people who helped me become a young man into the grown man that I am now.
I love it. And that what your uncle did there was teach you to have meaning.
Yeah.
You have to have, and that's the thing. And when you have meaning in what you do, and this, I work with a lot of people that, they're already in a position where it's like, well, I can't leave the business. I don't want to. And it's like, you can do whatever you want, but you can, if you find meaning in one area of your life, you can then lend it, which is what you do, into all the areas, but that it's at that core, it's at the foundation. And then it doesn't feel like work. It doesn't
that's the thing. And you are hitting the nail on the head with this, is that when I left the public school setting, I was working at a public school in Bedford as a TA, right? And I got an opportunity at a state-approved private school in Connecticut to be a teacher, a case manager, to kind of take that next step. And I was there for 2 years, and everything was good. I was, I had a voice in the room. I got to be, sort of in a leadership position. And my daughter was a couple months old, but I was miserable. I really felt like the systems in place for the people I wanted to help the most were not helping them. And that I was constrained by a system that would never leave the floor to reach the ceiling, right? For this system, the floor was good enough. And so having this conversation, I had just started the business, but I was doing it on the side. It was my side hustle at that point. And I decided in November, I remember this distinctly. It was November 2016. My daughter was born in 2016. I made the jump. I was like, you know what? We're going to do this full time. This is where I can make, the most impact. And you said this, right? Like when people say, oh, I can't leave, I can't leave this safety. I can't leave this security. I can't push myself to take this risk. I will tell you, the greatest thing I did was do that, because I had a daughter who was a couple months old. I was leaving the safety and security of a full-time teaching position, but by taking that risk, I knew I could not fail. I knew that if I failed, something went catastrophically wrong. And there was this newfound drive to make sure under all circumstances that I was successful. Because if the people I'm working with are successful, I will be successful. So
Yeah.
as long as I'm helping them and they're getting results, I'll be okay. And that's what's happened. And it's just gone from there. You know, we're looking 9-10 years down the road of now me being in this entrepreneurship space full time. But it really took the courage to take that first jump, to leave the safety and security behind, because that safety and security is an illusion. It's someone else's safety that they're giving to you, that they're lending to you. And I wanted to create my own safety, my own security.
Right.
And I think you got to take that first jump sometimes.
Wow, you embody so much of what I coach to, and that's faith. And it's like I used to have a not good association with the word faith. I don't have a great religious. I grew up with like my mom calling us a recovering Catholic, or her recovery, and my dad was like an extreme Jehovah's Witness, and so I just didn't like the word faith. And then I learned that what faith is really about, when you tap into that greater good, your purpose, your mission, why you're here. Who am I and why am I here?
Yeah.
You cannot fail. You follow the light, you follow the energy, and but you also have to change your definition of failure, right? Like,
so true.
yeah, and just keep moving forward no matter what. And you know what? I didn't learn that until I was 51, and it took the universe going, "You're just not getting it, Jen," and blew everything up for me. And I thankfully had been doing the work and asking the question, who am I and why am I here? I knew there was more. So I pivoted on a dime, and launched into what I'm doing now. And I'm happy. I'm free. My bank account still doesn't match what it did 3 years ago, and I could not care less. Like,
It's not
it
about
has
that money.
nothing to do with the money's coming, but here I am living my vision, living my purpose, and I'm impeccable. Doesn't mean I'm perfect. Doesn't mean anything, but I align myself with who I want to be, who I want to impact, my decisions, my choices, my actions, my habits, all in alignment with it. So that how is failure possible? It's not, because
Yeah.
it's aligned. That doesn't mean, that I'm not going to have struggles, or there's not going to be. That's how we get better and how we grow. So, wow.
Yeah.
You're
When
amazing.
you talk about redefining failure, I mean, if that could be dare I say, a campaign slogan, but I mean, that's, the reality is that we do have to redefine what all that stuff means, because failure, a lot of times we consider failure to be not perfect. Anything short of perfection is considered failure. And that's impossible. It's impossible to be perfect. It's impossible to have perfection. So when you go from fearing failure to expecting it to then
Yeah.
embracing it, that's a personal movement that, it's such a fulfilling moment when you do have that sort of an epiphany. And you
Yeah.
mentioned, your age, my age, where that happens on your journey is
Doesn't
irrelevant.
matter. Yeah.
There's no benchmark where it's like, oh, well, now I'm 40 and I missed my time. No,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely not. Your time is what you make of it, and when you
Yeah.
decide to act on it, and you could
Yeah.
do that whenever you need to.
Absolutely. Oh my God. We could just go on and on. I could talk to you forever. And you know what? My mantra forever was fail forward. And I also teach, to people that I'm teaching prospecting and lead generation and all that. Yes lives in the land of no. So if you're afraid of no, you'll never getting to the yeses. So you
That's
better
right.
get comfortable there. And that's failure, but
Absolutely.
also you can't fail unless you quit.
I mean, that is the ultimate failure. The second you take yourself, Teddy Roosevelt used to say, the man in the arena, right? We've
Mhm.
lost giving credit to the person who actually puts themselves into the arena, goes to battle and fights those fights. The second you take yourself out of the arena, you've
Yeah.
said, I no longer want this. I no longer want to be a fighter. But then you're not going to move anywhere. Then you're
Right.
stuck. You're stuck on the outside looking in for the rest of your life. The moment you
Yeah.
make that decision to leave the arena, you're on the outside looking in. And then you're never going to find any level of happiness, because nobody wants to be on the outside.
I love that. And Brene Brown talks about something like stop listening to the opinions of people who aren't in the arena. And
Man,
that's the
yeah,
thing. Yeah, I love that one. Because it's like that's what we do. And it's like, no, if they're not showing up, giving it their all, risking it all, putting themselves out there, don't listen. Don't
that's it.
listen.
That's it.
because you're taking the risk. But yeah, that faith that you embodied when your daughter was born, what a beautiful gift. And that's a gift that you're going to be able to pass on just through the legacy, just through that
You know,
embodiment.
I know we're up on time, but
No, we
the
got
one thing
some
I would
time.
the one thing I'd say about that is what's interesting is when I first got married, I was so focused on making sure that my wife, that first of all, that I stayed married because my parents were divorced, right? And I grew up, it never felt like a struggle, but I knew I was struggling. All my friends had,
Mhm.
I used to think it was crazy to have a house with stairs in it. Like that was cool. I never had that. And so like these were like these little benchmarks I set for myself. Like I want a house with stairs and I want, like all these things. And the one thing I said early on was I never want my kids to live and grow up the way I did.
Mm.
But I've moved off of that.
Yeah, because
Um,
you lived and grew up pretty freaking phenomenally, Brett.
like I am so grateful for the experiences and the lessons that I learned from
Mhm.
my mom, from even from my father, from my uncle, like all these other people, people who got in the and that's the thing. That's what I would end on is say these are people who got in the arena with me. They
Yes.
weren't on the outside commenting and critiquing and saying don't do this while not being involved.
Right.
These were people who carried me into the arena,
Yeah.
joined me in that fight,
Got you
really gave me that
uniformed,
ultimate
made
support.
sure you were focused and protected
Yeah.
and
And
supported.
so like I'm grateful for all of I wouldn't change anything about anything that has happened to me.
Me
And I have
too.
no idea what the future holds. All this could blow up tomorrow. But what I know is that I started all over again.
Yeah.
I do it all over again. So that's
Well,
that's where
here's the
I'm at.
biggest lesson. So what happened to me 3 years ago blew up my entire life, blew up my persona, like my income, like all the things were just gone. And my
Yeah.
reputation was at like all the things. But I was okay. I was
Yeah.
in the center of it. None of those are me. I'm in here.
That's
And
it.
I'm no matter what. And that's what that faith is. No matter what, I'm going to show up, do what I need to do, and it will all work out, whether it's the way I think it should or whatever God or the universe has in store for us. And
Yeah.
if you can get to that place, it's a beautiful place to be.
Well
So,
said.
what's next for you, and what's the most important message you want to get out there?
Just for people to start talking to each other again. Get to know your neighbors, get into your
Love
community, get active, be okay with making new friends. Be okay
that.
with making new friends with people who don't think the way you do, don't agree with you on everything, and put the work in to find that common ground because it's there. So that doesn't mean come out and vote for me. I would love for people to vote for me who live in my district and do all that. But more important than that, whether I win or lose, I'm still going to be here and I'm still going to be pushing this idea of making sure that we remember that we're neighbors first, everything else is second.
I love it. And I sent you a message that said you're the one, right? Do you know what I mean when I say that?
I appreciate that.
Yeah, you're going to bring it together. And I believe that whether you win or don't win, but I believe that you will win.
Oh,
And
thank you.
so, how do people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so you can find me on email, brett@yarrisforus.com. You can go to yarrisforus.com and visit the website. There's a contact form in there. Or you can find me on Facebook. Just search my name, Brett Yarris, on Facebook. I don't have a separate legislator page. I can't manage all of these different things. It's just me. You can find me, talk to me, communicate with me. I get back as best I can to everybody who reaches out, and I appreciate everybody who does. But yeah, Facebook, email, or go right to my website, yarrisforus.com.
Oh my God, this was great. You're one of my favorite guests yet, and I've had hundreds. So,
Well, thank you. I appreciate you.
really, really good stuff. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And we'll have all of Brett's contact information available on the bottom of the podcast. Thank you, guys.